everybody. My name is Eric Kasloff, and welcome to Smells Like Teen Horror. And this isn't only an episode of Team Horror, this is the second meeting of the Saturday Afternoon Society. And with me, as always, the members of the society, my fourth favorite Canadian. Number one, of course, being Bret Hart. Number two being Brian Adams. Number three being Steve Nash. And now Elizabeth. How's it going, Elizabeth?
It's going great, Eric. Thanks a lot for having me on today.
Yeah, and you were in some pretty good Canadian company with that list, huh?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like a little bit of a Canadian celebrity now.
Awesome. You're right there on the Mount Rushmore with like Tim Hortons, Wayne Gretzky,
Yep, yep.
and then my favorite librarian of all time, all the way from Shady Side, Ohio. Ty, how is it going?
It's going pretty good. Just starting my day.
Same here. So, what I would like to do with the society is have us, when we can, talk about a film from the late 90s or the early 2000s that's, scary, obviously, because that's all of our thing. But I don't want us to go into like the torture movies, or I don't like zombie movies, so we'll never do that. So we're going to keep it either slashers or what we have today. And this is the second time we have talked about this movie. Me and Dylan Tillman, aka Slasher Movie Reviews, talked about this about 2 years ago, but this movie has a place in my heart, and that is Cry Baby Lane. Now, was this your all's first time hearing about or watching this movie?
Yeah, it was definitely my first time hearing about it.
Okay, Elizabeth, what about you?
Yeah, it was my first time. I actually did a little bit of digging into some trivia and stuff like that, some facts about the movie, and apparently it was only released in the United States, so it wasn't released here in Canada.
Oh, wow. Okay, interesting. See that? I didn't know. Did you know there is a creepy pasta about this movie, but not about the movie, about the director?
Yes, yeah, I saw that, I think, in a YouTube video or something like that. I'd like to dig it up actually and read it if I can find it somewhere.
Oh, I'll find the video and I'll send it to you. It is stupid as all get out. Like the director had mind control over people and he wanted to put like weird stuff in it, but that's for another episode. So let's get right into I'm going to go last in all of this because I've seen it a bunch of times. So let's start with you, Elizabeth. What are your overall thoughts?
So this was my first time watching it, as I said, and it's definitely got the creep factor going. But growing up in the 80s and 90s myself, because this was released in October of 2000, so I went through the 80s and 90s growing up with, you know, stuff that was meant to be for kids, but when you look at it, it probably wasn't for kids. Like even, Roger Rabbit and the Goonies and stuff like that. It was pretty violent for a kids movie. So when I got to this one, I can definitely see the creep factor, and I loved it. I loved the story. I loved that it was based on an urban legend. I love movies that are based on urban legends.
And in about a
And
year, you're going to see a great one called Hillsborough Road, directed by a very untalented writer, director, and editor, but the cast is pretty good.
yeah, so I'll have to check that one out too. But yeah, as for this movie, I mean, it was fairly short. It was only about 70 minutes long, but it definitely had the creep factor. It had the storyline there. I think we're going to get into a little bit later on, like talking about the actual content of it and what we would change. But for me, it definitely did have that creep factor there. It had all of the vibes. It was surprising that it was a Nickelodeon, I think, because when I think about Nickelodeon, I think about like Rugrats and those types of shows. but I loved it. I thought it was great.
Ty?
Yeah, so it was my first time watching it. And like I mentioned to you guys in the chat, 5 minutes in, I was immediately understood why this movie had been banned. I cannot imagine a single parent sitting down with their child and like approving of this movie. That's not to say I didn't enjoy it. I definitely thought it was spooky, something I would have definitely enjoyed as a kid if it had still been around. I was born in 2000, so I just, missed the mark for that one. But
Okay.
yeah, the imagery they used, like the saws and all of that, I was very surprised to see that in a kid's movie. It had the same vibes as like Goosebumps and like stuff R.L. Stein put out, which is what I'm familiar with as far as like retro kids horror. But it definitely took it a step further, I thought. Almost like the director wasn't afraid of the parents versus I feel like R.L. Stein always pushes the like message of horror rather than like the horror visual elements as much.
Yeah. My thoughts on it again. I really like it. I would go. Could I say I love it? I'm close to loving it because I was a teenager like you were, Elizabeth, during this time. So I feel that there's a better movie in it than what we got. It
Yep.
felt like, I think if this would have been presented a little different, like if this would have been a special, oh my God, like, are you afraid of the dark episode? It would have pushed it up a lot more. So right now you're probably saying, okay, guys, you're talking about this movie, but what is it about? So Crybaby Lane is about this. It takes place in a small town that has an urban legend about these conjoined twins, one who was good, one who was evil. The twins sadly die. The father for somehow messed up and put, this is a twist that I'm giving away now. For some reason, the good twin was buried on a dirt road and the bad twin was buried in a grave. These two brothers are trying to scare these girls and they do a seance in a cemetery, which is always a great move. And they unleash the spirit of the evil twin and it slowly starts taking over people in the town. And yeah, that's pretty much the gist of the story. Now there's some things I wanted. Let's talk about that beginning because that first 5 minutes alone is one of the scariest short films you can see.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that. I loved that aspect of it. The actor Frank Langella, am I pronouncing that
Angela.
right? He's just a creepy dude. And I think they cast him perfectly to tell that story. I think it was done really, really well. The story itself, like the urban legend, is totally creepy. I mean, the guy saws his kids in half after they die so he can bury them separately. And can we just talk about the fact that in movies or books, something is always going to go wrong when you're doing a seance or when you're using a Ouija board. It reminded me, I don't know if you guys have seen the movie Now and Then.
Oh yeah, I always call that the girl version of Stand By Me.
Yes, and they do the kind of the seance in the graveyard, and that's what the whole story is based off of. That one is a little bit lighter, but it does still have that creepy factor where they're trying to bring back the spirit of a young boy. So, it had all of the elements there, especially at the beginning.
It definitely did. Like I said before, the imagery you get immediately for a kid's movie, something you don't expect to see is like actual weapons being shown on screen and like the thematic noises of the story that this creepy old dude is telling. You see later in the movie that the mother of these two boys really objects to them being around this guy, and like I totally agree. He's super creepy, but I would have also been that kid who was going to his house trying to get those stories because come on, like his storytelling ability
I thought there was an interesting parallel because we're talking about this movie that was supposedly there was an outcry from parents about the content and about the creep factor and stuff like that. But the mother, especially in the story, is very much what you would refer to as a helicopter parent. So it
Yeah.
was an interesting kind of parallel that was an aspect of the movie, and then this whole thing happened
Wow,
afterwards.
I never thought about that. It is a little meta when you look back at it.
Yeah.
And I will say, like, as far as parents complaining, it wasn't so much the scare factor that I thought parents might have had a problem with. It was things like the fact that the boys didn't listen to the parents whatsoever. And that was almost like encouraged in a way, like through the dad and through, like, you know, in a lot of kids' movies, you've got kids disobeying their parents. But now you've also got a kid who is showing his brother that being a man involves like pedaling really fast towards a moving train and like jumping across it. And like, I don't know, there are things in the news about kids these days dying for like social media stunts and stuff like that. So kids are too impressionable, I feel like. And that's probably where a lot of that parental complaint came from, is just the encouragement of dangerous behavior.
Yeah, and that definitely would have started around that time, because I know in the 80s and throughout mostly like the early to mid 90s, like parents would let their kids do anything, you know. So I
Yeah.
thought that was an interesting parallel between that in the movie and then what was happening in real life. But the dad was kind of off, hey? Like, you know, oh, they're
Yeah.
boys, you know, they were
Mhm.
supposed to be grounded, but you know, they've got to get outside, they've got to get dirty. You know, he was kind of off.
Yeah. To me, the dad character was kind of pointless.
Yeah.
It was like you could have cut him out of the movie, as you're going to hear in my pitch, and it wouldn't have affected anything. And also, I think this is again touching on what I was going to say. The older brother and the bike stuff, this was at the height of extreme sports. So him loving BMX should have been a bigger part of it. I mean, I love the fact that he dug wrestling because I'm a huge wrestling fan, and it was like interesting, but yeah, I agree with you guys. It was like there could have been more to it. And the let's talk about this. The mother's relationship with the Undertaker, like it was again, you could have gone deeper with that,
Yes.
not just the makeup about her mother's funeral. It's like, give us, you're right there at being so much better.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. Like the beginning, for me, the beginning of the movie was really good. You had this awesome urban legend and, you know, the kids that are doing the seance and stuff like this and the creepy Undertaker. And then the whole thing kind of lagged in the middle. And then you've
Yeah.
got his relationship with the mom, and he was talking about like, oh, I'm sorry about what happened to you at your mom's funeral, but it doesn't really go into anything. Same with the other family that is trying to have a funeral right now, and they're arguing about costs and stuff like that. So, you know, it kind of lagged in the middle a little bit. I would definitely change a lot about it.
Can we talk about Jim Gaffigan, one of the funniest comedians ever, playing the dad in that family? That's
I
Jim
don't know that
Gaffigan.
character. Yeah, I don't know that actor at all.
He's one of the funniest comedians ever. Look him up. Very family. He's the comedian you might know who talks about Hot Pockets a lot. And he does the whole thing where his voice, you know, he kind of talks like this to himself, and he's hilarious. Top 10 of all time stand-ups.
That's interesting. So
Yeah.
this was probably like you know, just a paycheck movie for him.
Oh, yeah. And now let's again with Frank Angela. This was not a paycheck movie for him. He was bringing it hard in all of the stuff he was in.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's talk about, did it feel like it was the late 90s and early 2000s, or did it feel like it could have took place in any time and any place?
I definitely thought it felt like 2000s, just for like quality and also acting, sound effects, all of that was very familiar, like I mentioned before. And like Goosebumps, I just feel like they took it a step further almost. But then again, they also seemed, like you guys said before, to kind of slack off a little bit. And so it kind of felt like it was trying to be two different movies. It felt like it was trying to be this really creepy, like spooky movie, and then it was also trying to be a kids movie. And I just didn't feel like it worked as well. But something I did notice that I wanted to point out. Did you guys get the Cujo reference with the dog jumping on the window? I saw that and I immediately got excited. Also, like maybe a bit of Evil Dead reference in the graveyard seance scene.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so that's how you know, like whoever was making it really cared about what they were doing. If they're, putting those references in there. I appreciate that in a horror movie.
I think if Nickelodeon would have let this be a returning thing on Halloween every year, it it would have been much more popular and like oh man, we can't wait for it this year to show up. But because everybody, it seemed like some of the actors were awful, and I'm going to get into that. But behind the camera, it seemed like they cared and put in so much effort. Let's talk about the characters a little bit. Who would you say was your favorite character and least favorite character, starting with Ty?
Oh, I can't say that I have a favorite character. I didn't really connect with any of them. The one I've probably found to be most enjoyable is just the old man, the funeral home director, just for the sake of mystery and his motivations. Because telling these stories to a kid, obviously this is something traumatic that happened in his life, and I'm curious as to why he would like be willing to share that with some children. But my least favorite character was probably the older brother, just
Really?
screaming toxic masculinity. And I can see part of that probably influenced by his dad. And you see a lot of that in older, like retro kids movies, is like being a man and what that means, and not being, a wimp, not being like the girls and stuff like that is definitely a theme that I was aware of. So I guess that just made me not really like the older brother, but that's not really his fault.
Yeah. Elizabeth?
I would definitely say, yeah, that the Undertaker was definitely my favorite character. He was creepy and it was well done, but he also had the comic relief in there, like when they were taking the body out of the one coffin and casket and putting it into the other one because the family didn't want to pay so much money. And so that one was really well done. I thought he was a great character. I wish he had been developed a little bit more. And for my least favorite, I definitely hated the older brother. He was annoying. I think he just annoyed me throughout the whole thing. But even more so than that, the mom I hate helicopter parenting, and she was just totally in it. She wanted to wrap those kids up in bubble wrap and not let them do anything. So I'd have to pick the mom more so than the older brother on that one.
I'm going to go with, again, keeping with the trend of the Undertaker character, but my least favorite character had to be his nephew.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Because there was a point where I was like, man, is he possessed? Is he? Because like
I really thought they were gonna come out and like he was gonna betray the kid and like the scene where all the girls crowd him, but it didn't come through.
Like when he's driving the hearse and he says, do you know where you're going? I honestly thought he was going to say, yeah, my brother's buried there. And oh, he's been possessed the whole time. That's why he's acting like that. Because it was like, man, you did not, was he somebody's nephew on, in the production? And they
Probably.
just gave him a part in the movie? Now, let's get into some of our issues with it. Mine, I'm gonna go first this time because I have a lot of issues with it. One, the relation, and then I'll get into that with my pitch. The relationship, as I said, with the Undertaker and the mom could have gone deeper. Two, and this gets again to my pitch, it should have been set on Halloween. They give it more of a creepy vibe to it. Three, the boys, how did they grow up in this town and not know the story? It's like they just heard it for the first time and they never say that they're the new kids. So those are my issues. And again, the Undertaker's nephew. Why? Why was he a character? And the dad. I mean, like he's going from watching monster truck rallies, and then when the wife's gone, he's watching that runway fashion model show. It was like, oh, I forgot to talk about the best part in the movie. That country song that the gravedigger is listening to. Oh my God, that is a straight up banger. I would listen to that song all day, every day.
You know, I think the Gravedigger character was hilarious. I think he was well done. And that whole scene where he's setting up, I presume, for a date,
Yeah.
and he's all decked out in his country attire and everything. Yeah, that was definitely well done.
So, Elizabeth, issues you had with it?
So first up, I think it would have done better if it was an hour-long special. So the show was 70 minutes. So by the time you add in all of your commercials and all of that kind of stuff, I guess it probably would have been on for an hour and a half. So I would think if you cut it down a little bit, it wouldn't have lagged so much in the middle. Like if we're just talking about what we dealt with, you know, in that thing, if we didn't change anything about the story except for to cut it down, I think it would have been, it would have done better if it was a little bit shorter, or if you had it the same length. You needed to develop some of those storylines, like you said, like with the Undertaker and the mother, develop that a little bit. What actually happened? It was sort of just like a random thing that was jammed in there. So I definitely would have done that. I think I would have rounded out the relationship between like the boys and the girls group a little bit, because they were sort of just kind of random, and like I understand how it worked with the story, but I would have developed that a little bit more. And definitely the issue with, if this is a local legend, how did these kids not know about it? I definitely would have agreed with that fact. You know, something like that, I think, especially in a small town, it would be well known. So those are kind of my biggest things. The other thing too, and I read this somewhere last night, is that it had a budget of about $800,000. So maybe if they had given it a little bit of a bigger budget, they would have rounded out, you know, the acting and stuff like that a little bit better.
Yeah. Ty?
Yeah, a lot of the same things. I think every problem I have with the movie could just be put down to not developing characters enough. I think every character was kind of slapped with a label and not really developed as much. Like the main character, the youngest brother, he was known to be a wimp, and like apparently that's his thing, but we don't really get more about that. It's kind of just him overcoming it. Which is a common thing I've seen in movies, and going back to like the toxic masculinity thing, that's always something that irks me, just because I know the damaging effects it can have on children who watch it, especially nowadays. And even back then, you know, it's an unconscious thing that a lot of, especially young boys, pick up on, and I don't appreciate that in media. And I saw that a bit with the dad and the mom too, like the lack of co-parenting, the fighting each other and trying to be, you know, the cool parent, and then the like overbearing one. It's just a lot of tropes that are played out, I feel like. So I would have liked to see a little less tropes and a little more like actual character development. And also like some parts felt pretty jumpy. I think that goes back to what Elizabeth said about like the budget. Obviously you can't have kids doing stunts, but
Yeah.
like some parts I got a little bit confused. I was like, wait, what just happened? And I was like, oh, okay, it was just like poor editing. That's fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, those are some of my main issues. You need more from the characters, and the girls probably should have been more of a plot point than just like something for the main character to obtain. almost, that the stated sex issues bothered me in the movie the most.
But to me, you didn't even really get that because, like we've been saying, the characters were so. I mean, we're all R.L. Stein fans, and people accuse him of his characters not having depth, but his characters are way more complex compared to these characters. It's like you never got the feeling that Carl and the girl liked each other. It was just like they liked each other because they liked each other.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
whole thing, they could have had the older brother, Andrew, just be more into, like, the tougher stuff without being a jerk about it. Now, being like that to his little brother, that's just how some brothers' relationships are. It could be in a goofing around kind of way, but it just, you never felt anything. Like him apologizing without apologizing at the end, I like that because that's brothers or just guys in general, but he wasn't a bully enough to his brother, to me, to be a full-on jerk, but he wasn't loving enough to his brother to be a loving brother. He was just the older brother because that's what older brothers do. And Carl, like, what did we see him liking? I mean, he liked hanging out with a 9-year-old who liked Lord of the Rings, which was kind of weird. And, they were doing Lord of the Rings a year before the movie came out. So they were kind of advanced in that a little bit. Because, I mean, yeah, Lord of the Rings was popular, but it wasn't a pop culture juggernaut like it is now. I mean, you had to be like a D&D high fantasy kid to really know Lord of the Rings when this movie came out. So I got to give them credit for that. And again, that 9-year-old could have easily been cut out of the movie and it would not have affected it at all. I mean, did you even remember him being in the movie till I mentioned him being in the movie?
Funny enough, I was like, oh yeah, the Lord of the Rings kid. Yeah, no, he definitely didn't really need to be a part of it at all.
I remember him because I was shocked that he took down the old man with like a few hits with his like lightsaber. What was that? Also, I had one of like those like whip out lightsabers. So that was like really cool to see. But no, I was really confused by that. I think that goes to budget as well. That was just like one of those weird didn't flow well moments of all of a sudden this old man is down with like 3 hits from this plastic toy.
Yeah.
From a 9-year-old hitting him. So, I was a little confused there.
Well, and then the kid like took his ring, and I get like the whole Lord of the Rings thing, but it was like a class ring, but it didn't fit with the story. Like what?
It seemed like they were gonna do something with it, and then like
it just kind of
nothing
fell
happened.
off.
Yeah.
And the whole thing about the town being corrupted by the evil of the twin, that should have been a bigger part of it, but it was just like, yeah, that's kind of happening. It's like it felt more like a side dish when you go to a restaurant. It's like, you got your steak, which is the beginning, and then the town being corrupted is like not even the mashed potatoes in your steak dinner. It's like the vegetables that, oh yeah, the carrots are there. I'm not going to eat them that much, but I appreciate that they gave me carrots.
It gave me Stranger Things season 3. Honestly, I'm like, I love season 3. I actually just got done watching it, and I was excited to see that the whole town was being possessed. Like it's not something you really would have expected, and then for them to really just not like fully fledge out that and get more scenes other than like public humiliation was like kind of disappointing.
And I just go on, Elizabeth.
They had the ideas there. The ideas were there. It just wasn't executed very well.
Yeah. Okay, so let's get into what you all would do differently. I'm going to go last in that because pitching is kind of what I do for a living, pitching stuff. So I have what I think is a pretty good pitch. So I want to hear what you guys have to say first.
Uh,
Elizabeth. Oh, Ty, you go first.
okay. First of all, this kid's like doesn't even bother to lie to his mom, which like, come on, if you're gonna disobey your parents, you better like be creative about it. It's like end of the world times. You gotta at least tell your mom you're spending the night at your 9-year-old kid friend's house, like something besides just running away from her. Obviously, because she is the reason, taking him away from the old man's house. It's the reason the old man gets taken down and stuff like that. So first of all, you gotta lie better. Second of all, if I've learned anything from the Winchesters, it's just salt and burn. Salt and burn. Don't even waste time with the roots. Just dig up that body, burn it. That's what I would do differently. Not much there.
Right. Elizabeth?
So I probably should have made some notes, but just overall, like I said, I love the idea of the core story. The urban legend was good. It was a good one. The twist of the fact that the kids were buried in the opposite graves, great. So I think I would change the fact that, Eric, like you said, maybe these kids should have been new kids in town, because if this is such a small town, an urban legend like that is going to be really, really well known.
Yeah.
So definitely probably bring these guys in as new kids in town. I would have improved the parents, because the parents just really annoyed me. And with the Undertaker, like, why was everyone so creeped out by him? Like, was it just because he was an Undertaker? Like, maybe loop in sort of a little bit of a story that, like, there's a backstory to him a little bit. That's kind of a rumor, and that's why the parents don't want the kids going around them. Like, being an Undertaker is not creepy. I lived in a funeral home for a very short time. It's not creepy.
You
like,
were Veda Sultanfoot? Sultanfoot?
that's a story for another day. But yeah, I did live in a funeral home for a very short time. But I would have done something with him. Like, why do the parents just really dislike him? Why do they want to keep their kids away from him? So maybe put in a little bit of a backstory with him. I definitely would have removed the Lord of the Rings kid. Absolutely, he had no purpose in there whatsoever. Develop the story a little bit between the boys and the girls group. Maybe develop the girls' characters a little bit more. I don't know, you could definitely do some dynamic things there, with middle grade sort of YA love characters, crushes, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
See, when you said do things differently, I thought you meant if we were the kids. So like, I really was like in this situation, like how.
Okay, I should have, okay, I thought I explained it right, but I'm sorry about that.
No, I was so confused.
My bad.
Yeah, so I think we're probably all on the same wavelength, Ty. I think you're probably on the same wavelength as I am.
Honestly, like, less characters could have given them more time to fledge out the characters that actually mattered. So I definitely agree with you there. Just needed to be more developed.
Yeah, there was, like I said, the beginning was really, really good.
Mm-hmm.
The middle lagged. There was kind of too much going on that wasn't developed enough.
But not enough at the same time.
It was just kind of jammed together. And then the end kind of brought it together a little bit once they got back to the urban legend and he was trying to go to the bodies and stuff like that. But definitely those are a few things that I would have done. Some backstories, character development. Why did these kids not know about this urban legend? Eric, I think you had a good idea too, like to place this on Halloween, maybe things, because the veil between the living and the dead is a little bit thinner, you're going to have this stuff happening and the town gets possessed and all of that sort of thing. So those are a few things I definitely would change.
All right, here goes what I would do differently. Now, you guys are the heads of Paramount while I pitch this. First off, I have to explain to you that, no, seriously, you own the rights to this thing called Crybaby Lane. I know you don't remember it, but here's what I would do. Number one, Carl and his older brother, in my pitch, Carl and Andrew are twins, which is going to play in later. Number one, the mom and her sons, the father passes away tragically. The mom, who is a beautician in Los Angeles for famous people, because of this, she has to move back to her hometown with her father, who is an undertaker. They have a strained relationship because of the mother. She was very close to her mom, but they just had a falling out because she got pregnant very young. The father didn't approve of that. He didn't hate his daughter. He still loved her, but was disappointed. So she leaves town, comes back to work with him at the funeral home, doing makeup for the dead people. Carl and Andrew are close. They're twin brothers, but they're the kind of twin brothers where like they know what each other's thinking before the other one thinks it. It's their first day of high school at this new school. They get there. The younger brother, Carl, we're going to still have him be a bit more geeky than his older brother. His older brother is a jock, but not a D-bag jock. You know, he's just like, he digs sports. That's his thing. He knows his family doesn't have a lot of money. So he emphasizes in sports as a way for him to go to school, to be something, you know, to get a degree. Carl is a writer. He's kind of like the kid in It, the original It, where he was like, he wants to tell scary stories. That's his thing. He meets the girl, and you know, you do a little meet cute kind of way with them, but her boyfriend is a total jerk. You know, he's bullying the kid, stuff like that, teasing him. He embarrasses him in front of the whole entire school. After lunch, jerk kid is, you know, being a jerk. He sees the other twin brother who's coming after him. He's like, hey, Carl, you changed clothes after gym? And the other brother says something. They get into a fight. Older brother does like a full Nelson, brings down the bully, you know, roughs him up a little bit. They pull them off. He's pissed at the older brother, pissed at his girlfriend for siding with the twins. They get back at them. He goes, okay, you think you're so tough? Meet us tonight at this bridge. They go to the bridge. Since these are new kids, they tell the story about the Siamese twins. Same story, but we changed something. Instead of the good twin being buried in the road and the evil twin being buried at the cemetery, we keep the evil twin being buried at this road because when you tell the story of the twins that happen around Halloween, you have to pick part of the ground. Now, none of the kids in this town thinks the story's real. So they just pluck out of the ground to be plucking, you know, they know it's not real. But when our twins are there, the older brother pulls something out, and that's the thing that unleashes the evil. Now, instead of just having the evil randomly coming into people, the older brother starts changing a little bit. He is a little bit meaner to his younger brother. He's more distant from him. And he's, you know, kind of doing something to where the evil is spreading. Now, the younger brother would then have to team up with his grandfather, who is the Undertaker, who did separate the twins, in order to find out where the good twin is buried and to unleash him to stop the evil. I think by doing this and developing the characters more, it would be a much better movie in my point of view, because again, why wouldn't they know the story? You have to bring them in. The dad character's pointless. Cut him out. Now you have tension between the mom and the Undertaker, and we know why there's tension. And if you want to keep the ring in it and the weird Lord of the Rings kid just because it's the do it, It could be his wedding ring that the kid steals, something like that. I just feel that by bringing them in new and having them be twins, which would connect to the evil conjoined twins, it makes it a bit more deeper, and maybe you can go a little scarier with it. That's how I would do things.
Yeah, I would have to agree with, I mean, that's a great storyline. I mean, even if I rewrote it, I would do it a little bit differently than you did, and it would be a better storyline than the middle of
Yeah.
what we got in that film. So it definitely could have been done better. I liked it. I still liked it
Oh,
overall.
same with
It
me.
was
Yeah.
a great storyline. It just needed to be improved a little bit. And I think with a little bit of extra budget and a little bit of extra time, or if they had to cut it down to a 1 hour special, you probably could have done a lot more with that base story. But like, whether you go with Eric's pitch or I come up with something and you go with my pitch, the one thing you got to put in there are the horror movie Easter eggs, like the Cujo
Yes.
reference and the Evil Dead. Maybe put something in there from, a few other things, or from Fear Street or something like that.
Yeah.
You would have a piece of gold there for sure.
It also sounds like you're pitching it more towards like high school age, which I think would work a lot better for the story. It wouldn't hold back that scary element as much, and it would also make some of the themes a little more age appropriate.
Yeah, and I just feel that you have, again, such a great urban legend to base something on. And again, with the horror references, maybe just have the younger brother go through what Ash went through in The Evil Dead. Just nothing but bad stuff happening to him. And if you want to keep the Bertha joke in it, constantly mention that so he can just have a snapping moment shouting, "Who's Bertha?" And then Bertha comes out. You just make it a bit more funnier, but still scarier, and if you keep it a hard PG-13
Yeah.
would be the way to go with this. So that way you can get the younger audience there, they can show up, but it is more geared towards the older teens, like 15 to 18 would be the target demographic for my version of it.
And I think it will be really cool if you kept those comedic elements in there with the Undertaker, like how he's always trying to cut corners and make things a little bit cheaper on himself. So that could be a good bit of comic relief in something that's around a PG-13.
Yeah. All right, so let's end this with giving it a 1 out of 5, starting with Ty. 1 out of 5. What do you give it?
For a solid retro kids movie, I'd give it like a 2.5, maybe a 3 if some of these improvements were to take place.
So 2.5, Elizabeth?
Yeah, I would say I would say I'd put it around a 3. I think because the elements were there, I could see it. It was right on the cusp, but it wasn't doing it for me. So definitely, I think if it had a little bit of a bigger budget, a little bit of a rewrite, some better actors, it definitely would have gotten there for me.
I'm going to piggyback a little bit to what you got, and it's been kind of the common theme. And I think when it comes to something, when you say I wanted more, that can usually be a good thing, instead of like Stairway to Heaven is an awesome song, but nobody thinks there should be a longer version of it. It's like, did I need to eat all 12 buffalo wings? No, but I did, and I enjoyed it. There could have been so much more. And again, Nickelodeon at the time wasn't afraid of doing horror. Are You Afraid of the Dark is terrifying, some of those episodes.
Yeah.
I think if you would have maybe had it be an Are You Afraid of the Dark episode, and maybe, again, you have all those actors, maybe bring some of them and act in it. Because I think this was filmed in Canada. They were right there. You could have got them, just have them play different people. But I'm going to go with, mainly because of the nostalgia factor, a 3 out of 5. But it doesn't deserve the 3. it is a 2.5, like Ty said, but the nostalgic factor of it and what it could have been is a 3. Now let's do something different. Let's give that opening 5 minutes a 1 out of 5, starting with Elizabeth. What do you give the opening 5 minutes?
You know what? I got to go with a 5 out of 5 on it.
Yeah.
I do. I have to go with a 5 out of 5. It had the creep factor. The score was awesome. The music is awesome. You know, it started off kind of dark and spooky, and then you've got the Undertaker telling his story, and the background effects with like the saw, like you can hear the saw and all of that. Like it was spectacular. So that aspect, I would have to give it a full 5.
Ty?
A 4 out of 5 for me. Yeah, it was really good. I really enjoyed it. It definitely piqued my attention. It wasn't the best I've seen, but it was definitely for a 2000s kids movie. 4 out of 5.
I'm gonna go with Elizabeth and say a 5 out of 5. It was terrifying the way that I could imagine like a 9 or 10-year-old watching this on that Saturday night on Halloween weekend and pissing their pants over that opening 5 minutes. Well, yeah, this concludes another meeting of the Saturday Afternoon Society. I just want to thank Elizabeth and Ty for coming on again. All of their links will be in the description of this video. And everybody, I haven't come up with a cool way to end this segment that we do on my channel. So yeah, bye.